Hi guys, welcome to week 2 of English 1 with Miss Eichler for quarter 4. So starting this week, I'm going to be sending you guys out a video each week, giving you a rundown of assignments, giving you a preview of what you'll need to get through this week, and then working through anything that, any sort of assignments that are new. So it should kind of mimic the way that class goes. If you have questions, continue to email me or send me a message on Remind or Edmodo so I can answer those. And let's get started. So this week, we're going to begin our work on the Odyssey. Last week, you guys discussed the idea of what makes a hero and what does the typical hero's journey look like in literature, movies, books, things like that. So from here until the end of the year, we're going to be working on the Odyssey, which is an epic poem, meaning it's a long poem that follows our main character, Odysseus, through the 12 steps of the hero's journey. So today we're going to do a little intro, and then I'm going to get you started on the first little reading section. We're going to do a little guided reading for your first assignment for this week. So first thing I'm going to show you guys is an intro video to the Odyssey, kind of an overview of what the story is, where it comes from, who the characters are, and what you can expect.
A close encounter with a man-eating giant. A sorceress who turns men into pigs. A long-lost king taking back his throne. On their own, any of these make great stories, but each is just one episode in the Odyssey, a 12,000-line poem spanning years of ancient Greek history, myth, and legend. How do we make sense of such a massive text that comes from and tells of a world so far away? The fact that we can read the Odyssey at all is pretty incredible, as it was composed before the Greek alphabet appeared in the 8th century BCE. It was made for listeners rather than readers, and was performed by oral poets called rhapsodes. Tradition identifies its author as a blind man named Homer, but no one definitively knows whether he was real or legendary. The earliest mentions of him occur centuries after his era, and the poems attributed to him seem to have been changed and rearranged many times by multiple authors before finally being written down in their current form. In fact, the word rhapsode means stitching together, as these poets combined existing stories, jokes, myths, and songs into a single narrative. To recite these massive epics live, rhapsodes employed a steady meter, along with mnemonic devices like repetition of memorized passages, or set pieces. These included descriptions of scenery and lists of characters, and helped the rhapsode keep their place in the narrative, just as the chorus or bridge of a song helps us to remember the next verses. Because most of the tales were familiar to the audience, it was common to hear the sections of the poem out of order. At some point, the order became set in stone, and the story was locked into place as the one we read today. But since the world has changed a bit in the last several thousand years, it helps to have some background before jumping in. The Odyssey itself is a sequel to Homer's other famous epic, the Iliad, which tells the story of the Trojan War. If there's one major theme uniting both poems, it's this: do not, under any circumstances, incur the wrath of the gods. The Greek pantheon is a dangerous mix of divine power and human insecurity, prone to jealousy and grudges of epic proportions. And many of the problems faced by humans in the poems are caused by their hubris, or excessive pride in believing themselves superior to the gods. The desire to please the gods was so great that the ancient Greeks traditionally welcomed all strangers into their homes with generosity, for fear that the strangers might be gods in disguise. This ancient code of hospitality was called xenia. It involved hosts providing their guests with safety, food, and comfort, and the guests returning the favor with courtesy and gifts if they had them. Xenia has a significant role in the Odyssey, where Odysseus in his wanderings is the perpetual guest, while in his absence, his clever wife Penelope plays non-stop host. The Odyssey recounts all of Odysseus's years of travel, but the narrative begins in medias res, in the middle of things. 10 years after the Trojan War, we find our hero trapped on an island, still far from his native Ithaca and the family he hasn't seen for 20 years. Because he's angered the sea god Poseidon by blinding his son, a Cyclops, Odysseus's passage home has been fraught with mishap after mishap. With trouble brewing at home and gods discussing his fate, Odysseus begins the account of those missing years to his hosts. One of the most fascinating things about the Odyssey is the gap between how little we know about its time period and the wealth of detail the text itself contains. Historians, linguists, and archaeologists have spent centuries searching for the ruins of Troy and identifying which islands Odysseus visited. Just like its hero, the 24-book epic has made its own long journey through centuries of myth and history to tell us its incredible story today.
So today we're going to focus on book 1. Our textbook gives you a selection of the poem. We're not going to read the entire thing because that would take way too long. But today we're going to get started with book 1. So I'm now going to show you a screencast of how to access where to get to book 1. Okay, so to get to your textbook, I'm going to go to the portal. I'm going to find English 1 and click on the textbook. And once it opens, I'm going to click on the yellow student ebook. And once I get to the student ebook, I'm going to hover over the top of the screen where it says go to page. And I'm going to type in 371 and hit enter. And you should see part 1, The Wanderings of Odysseus. To zoom in on my screen, I'm going to click the page view on the left-hand side. And I'm going to scroll up like that, so I've got it nice and big for me. So the as you read says, pay attention to details that tell how Odysseus confronts the various challenges of his journey. Write down any questions you generate during reading. So today we're going to cover book 1, which is just this one page. And book 1 is titled A Goddess Intervenes. Sing in me muse, and through me tell the story of that man skilled in all ways of contending, the wanderer, harried for years on end, after he plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy. He saw the townlands and learned the minds of many distant men, and weathered many bitter nights and days in his deep heart at sea, while he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. But not by will nor valor could he save them, for their own recklessness destroyed them all, children and fools. They killed and feasted on the cattle of Lord Helios, the sun, and he who moves all day through heaven took from their eyes the dawn of their return. Of these adventures muse, daughter of Zeus, tell us in our time, lift the great song again. Okay, then we have this italicized portion down here. It's going to give us a little bit of background. And this says, the story of Odysseus begins with the goddess Athena's appealing to Zeus to help Odysseus, who has been wandering for 10 years on the seas, to find his way home to his family on Ithaca. While Odysseus has been gone, his son, Telemachus, has grown to manhood, and his wife, Penelope, has been besieged by suitors wishing to marry her and gain Odysseus's wealth. The suitors have taken up residence in her home and are constantly feasting on the family's cattle, sheep, and goats. They dishonor Odysseus and his family. Taking Athena's advice, Telemachus travels to Pylos for word of his father. Meanwhile, on Ithaca, the evil suitors plot to kill Telemachus when he returns. All right, so we just had a whole lot there. I'm going to go back and we're going to do some guided reading questions. So the first one I'm going to do with you, and we're going to look at the very beginning. So it says, sing in me muse, and through me tell the story of that man skilled in all ways of contending. The speaker here is the narrator, and the narrator is asking the muse. And on the side we have, it's a daughter of Zeus, credited with divine inspiration. This is somebody who, when writers or artists talk about a muse, it's somebody who gives them inspiration. So the narrator is asking this muse, can you please tell me the story of this man who is skilled in all ways of contending, all ways of working and being? Who's this man? That's Odysseus. And then in line 3 it says, the wanderer harried for years on end after he plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy. Here they're talking about the Trojan War. And it says, Odysseus plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy, meaning that he won, he overcame. He was able to plunder, basically, he was able to conquer the stronghold of the Trojans. So my question to you is, it says that he's been wandering for years on end. How do we know that he's feeling lost or kind of without a purpose or without an end in sight? And for me, the key here right here is harried for years on end. And if we look over here, it says tormented and harassed. So in my response, my question to you is, what has Odysseus's mindset been in these years since the Trojan War? And I'm going to say, in these years since the Trojan War. So in these years since the Trojan War, Odysseus has been wandering without a true purpose. The poem calls him harried, which shows that he's feeling tormented and harassed. So go ahead and rewind and replay that piece if you need the answer again for number 1. And to me, this is like a classic example of somebody coming home from war. And we see this even today. We have soldiers who come home from war and they feel tormented, they feel harassed. And what do we call that? We often call it PTSD. They don't know how to return to civilian life. They feel like they've seen things that they can't contend with, they can't deal with in their own mind. They feel different from, a regular person who hasn't seen those things. So right from the start, we know that Odysseus is feeling lost, and he's felt like this for years. Go ahead and pause if you still need to finish answering that question. Number 2, we're going to look at lines 6 and 7. It says, he saw the town lands and learned the minds of many distant men, and weathered many bitter nights and days in his deep heart at sea. My question is, what has he seen in these years? And how do we know that he's seen all of these things? So you could start with a sentence frame like, in the years since the Trojan War, Odysseus has experienced blank. We know this when the author used words like so go ahead and take a moment and answer number 2. Go ahead and pause me if you need to. Pause. Lines 7 and 8, it says, while he, so Odysseus, fought only to save his life to bring his shipmates home. What do these 2 lines say about Odysseus as a soldier, as a captain? What kind of guy was he? Was he out for blood? Did he love the thrill of killing? So if I were you, I would start with a sentence frame like, from these two lines, we can tell that Odysseus's character is blank. We know this because, and then cite what words in here tell us about his character. Go ahead and pause me if you still need to finish writing number 3. For number 4, we're going to look at lines 10 through 13. So we're going to look at these 4 here. It says, but not by will nor valor could he save them. Them, those are his shipmates. So it says, but not by will nor valor could he save them. So no matter what he did, he couldn't save their lives. For their own recklessness destroyed them all, children and fools. They killed and feasted on the cattle of Lord Helios. My question to you is, what happened to his men? What mistake did they make? Why did they die? Go ahead and pause me while you finish number 4. In question number 5, we're going to look at these final 2 lines. Of these adventures, Muse, daughter of Zeus, tell us in our time, lift the great song again. My question to you is, what is the narrator asking of the Muse? What does he want from her? What are we about to hear? So go ahead and answer number 5. Pause me while you do that. And my final question to you, number 6. Based on your notes on the hero's journey, the 12 steps that we know that these typical heroes go through, what's your prediction for what will happen in book 2? What are we about to see? What's that first step that we're about to hear about from the Muse? So go ahead and take 1 to 2 complete sentences and give me a specific prediction. What's the first type of action we're going to see? Where are we going to open this story? Where is book 2 going to put us? Go ahead and pause me if you need to finish number 6. And once you're complete, I want you to make sure that you have all complete sentences for these answers. And for 1 through 5, you should have evidence cited from the lines for each of those. And once you're done, you can go ahead and click the blue Turn In button on the top right corner of your Edmodo